What is up, guys? johnjoaneh here, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Weaver, the newest Elementalist elite specialization introduced in the Path of Fire. I apologize in advance for the length of this video. It came out to be much longer than I had anticipated, but I do go into a lot of detail about combos that you can do and how everything works in terms of how condition damage is applied and how you can increase the amount of damage that you do. There is one thing that I do kind of forget to talk about towards the end, and it's regarding this ability, the elite ability, which is Weave Self. The way this works is you activate it, and then you hit every single one of the attunements. By doing this, you achieve the perfect weave. You gain all the conditions, and then you strike, hit it one more time, and it does a full area of effect. It's the second part, which is Tailored Victory, which is just, I guess, a little bit of damage. Personally, I would prefer the stacks of condition or boons that get applied to you. Like Woven Fire, you get condition damage. Woven Air, you get movement speed. Woven Earth, you get toughness. I'd much rather prefer that than to just get rid of it with one final blast. So yeah, I do forget to talk about that, so that's why I'm just kind of mentioning that now before I get started. By the end of this video, I hope that you guys will learn everything you need to know about the Weaver and how to correctly build him to suit your needs, either PvP or PvE. So I'm going to follow a specific order in this video. First, I'm going to be talking about specializations, then about the weapons, then about the equipment, and then about the skills. So, to start things off, specializations, we're going to go with Fire, Earth, and of course the Weaver. So for Fire, we pick Burning Precision for the first one, and that is because this one is useless, and this one is good, however needs 3 conditions to be triggered, and based on the rest of the build, you might not see this too often. And it's also very possible you can actually switch out this skill, which I'll talk about later, and just replace it with Cleansing Fire. I mean, that's not a terrible thing to do. You can easily do that, so you don't really need to put this here. Instead, make room for something that's better. Every time you inflict a critical hit, you get a chance to burn your foe. And the duration is increased by 20%. That is huge. Duration is everything, and you want that as much as possible. Next one is Pyromancer's Training, and this is obvious, of course. It reduces the recharge on your fire abilities and increases damage. This one does not. Simply put, this ability increases duration for your fire shields, which is not a very important thing in this build. This, although is very good, let me explain why I'm not picking this one. Real quick, I'm going to go to my equipment. My power is 1400. That means I will get an increase of 140. My condition damage is already 1.2k. It is not gonna make much of a difference. I would rather have a reduced recharge rate on my abilities than a little bit of extra condition damage that I don't really need, because it's not gonna make much of a difference. Moving on. Now we go to Pyromancer's something or other, because I don't know how to pronounce that. Puissance. That is how that is pronounced now. This is great because if you use any skill, you automatically gain 30 power, 30 condition damage. And guess what? That makes up for this shit. Because if I use 5 skills in a row, that's 150 condition damage. Because it stacks. Right? This one, I would recommend only if you're in PvP. Because you want to blind the shit out of all of your opponents. This is going to be very helpful. So keep that in mind for PvP. This is everything else. Moving on. Earth. First off, serrated stones. This is pretty much the... which one? This one. They're pretty much the same. Bleeding is increased and damage is increased. Next. Gain condition damage based on toughness. Although I said it here, which is not necessary, because this is based on power, right? I have 100 power. Sorry, 1,000 power. But I have 2,000 toughness. So I'm actually going to take that one, because it gives me 200 condition damage, which will make a difference. These other ones don't help me too much, although I would recommend this one if you're in PvP, because obviously movement impeding conditions put on you can be detrimental. So this one will help you very much in PvP. Next. Now, this one is based on your playstyle. You can either choose this or you can choose this. Now, if you decide to take this off and go with this, I would recommend switching from Burning Precision to Cleansing Fire. Because this, what this does is it removes a condition every time you're struck while your health is above the threshold. And that is really, really good. Because if you can maintain your health, you know, and get struck while you have 3 or 4 conditions on you, this relieves your conditions much faster than this, because Cleansing Fire has a cooldown. This does not. So that is, of course, definitely helpful. In terms of PvP, this is also a very good alternative, because when you're attuned to Earth, you cannot be critically hit. So you can play around with either this or this in PvP. Either one would be good. Although I would recommend switching to Stoneheart, because it might be hard to keep your health at that threshold if you're in PvP. So keep that in mind. In regards to everything else, if you're going to be using your signets a lot and you're going to need the passive ability, then of course you can pick this. If you're going to find that, you know what, you might not need improved precision or improved toughness at the time of use, I would really stick with Diamond Skin. It is an extremely good ability. Moving on. Superior Elements. This is better than these two. That is all. I would take this if you're in PvP. I would take this if you have extremely low health and you're using a precision build rather than my kind of build that I'm using. So this is, I only picked this because it's the better alternative. Moving on, Weaver's Prowess. This is an extremely good ability. You gain increased condition damage and increased condition duration. And I'm going to show you what that means. This is going to be good for PvP, I think. This, I'm going to say no. This is probably your better bet for PvP. But this, you know what, even this would be good for PvP too. I mean, it's not going to be detrimental, you know. But this is good for everything, and I'm going to show you what that means. So as soon as I switch to an attunement, you're going to see this number, 11,053, increase. So let's see. To 12,632. Why? Why does it increase by 1600? It is simply because of the 20% extra condition duration. Duration is everything. Because let me explain how the condition damage works. You can stop thinking about the stack. The stack of 4 literally means nothing. It's the time. The time is everything. What you want to do is you take the 11,053 divided by 8.5. 8.5 divided by 8.5. That will tell you the amount of damage that your opponent receives every second. If I increase the duration by a whole second, then I increase the damage. So that is why condition duration is a very good thing to have. Finally, I went with Woven Stride, simply because the other ones are just extra shit. And, I mean, they might not be shit, but I simply don't need them, right? Gain Vigor when using a dual attack. That's this. You only gain 3 seconds of Vigor when you use this attack. And, of course, it's on a cooldown, right? So you'd have to switch attunements and keep using it, you know? And keep using that dual attack to gain a steady flow of endurance regeneration. That's hard to achieve, and it's not practical. This one, gain damage bonus for a period of time when attuned to a single element. That's good, but not ideal. You don't want to be attuned to a single element, because that really can screw you over. If you attune to fire, you're pretty much just an elementalist. You don't have any weaver capabilities anymore. So that is not an ideal circumstance to be in. You always want to have that dual attack. You always want to be attuned to at least 2, not at least 1. So you go with the next best, which gives you some swiftness and some regeneration when you are inflicted with an inhibiting condition, meaning when you're chilled, mobilized, or crippled. So that's that. Now let's move on to weapons. The best weapons to use for main hand. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of the offhands. And I mean, for underwater you kind of have no choice. It's the trident. Now, going over all of the weapons, I would say that you cannot go wrong with having a sword. Every single attunement does something that is very good. And I'm going to take this time to actually go over the attunements. So obviously, I'm sure you guys are aware, fire is your damage. Water is your healing. Earth is your survivability, and air is kind of like your own sort of support. Abilities that kind of supplement your other attunements. So, in a condition build, you're going to be switching between your earth and your fire mainly, because that's where your condition damage comes from. Your bleeding and your burning. So you can't go wrong with having sword. Dagger. Dagger is good, but not as good, I would say. Now, there are cases where you will find some abilities have really good condition damage, like Drake's Breath. There's also Impale. Impale adds up very quickly. This one, although does good condition damage, it's very inaccurate. Meaning, when you attack with it, what happens is you create that ring that you just saw. If they are not standing on that ring, you missed. So it's a very difficult ability to hit. As far as dual attacks go, they are not bad. There's only a couple of them that would be good. So fire and earth, fire and air, no, and earth and air. So I mean, it's good, but sword is definitely better. I would definitely rely on the sword more than the dagger. Scepter, I will get to in a second. Staff is also good, but in a different sense. Staff is good if you are on a world boss or a big event or some kind of champion, or you're in a group and you're fighting, because staff is all about crowd control. There are some conditions, condition damage based attacks, but it's mostly stuns, dazes, and you have your main your main abilities, but again, they're mainly about crowd control. So I would not use this if you're just doing, solo mode PvE. Now, as far as the scepter is very good. I like the scepter very much because it burns. The main ability adds up. The Dragon's Tooth, definitely strong, good finisher as well, but definitely strong ability. Earth, this definitely adds up very quickly. This is a very good ability. But the dual attacks are the main thing. Now, do you see the vulnerability there? Vulnerability actually improves the condition damage that you apply. So having stacks of vulnerability is very important. And if you guys recall from my Tempest build, which I have a link to in the description below, it's all about DPS and high precision and critical hits every single time. If you guys recall from that video, there's lots of vulnerability applying. And the vulnerability is what makes the build so successful in any build. The more vulnerability you apply, the more damage you do, more damage over time you do. So this one applies vulnerability, fire and earth. Let's see, I remember there was one more. This one, earth and water. So in this case, what you would do is you would have water and earth. Sorry, you want earth to be the main one here. So you have water and earth. Oh, of course I'm using daggers, sorry. But just bear with me. So you'd have earth and water. This will give you this ability. You attack with it, and then right away you switch to fire. And then you'll get this ability. And then you strike with this ability. And that will give you 8 plus 6, that's 14 stacks of vulnerability, and 2 stacks of condition damage, burning and bleeding. That is the best combo you can make with staff, with a scepter I mean, and that will apply lots of damage. And I will try to demonstrate that in a little while. So, to wrap up, scepter and sword, very good. Dagger, slightly okay. Staff, only when you're doing a boss or a big group kind of event. Now, on to equipment. I am going to mention my equipment is not the ideal. If you have access to Viper equipment, that is going to be the best armor for the Weaver. And I'm just going to show you real quick what Viper looks like by doing this. The Viper has power. Oh, sorry. Has power, precision, condition damage, and expertise. Now that's going to increase this. It's going to increase your critical hit chance, which is important. It won't increase your ferocity like grieving. Grieving increases ferocity, but that's okay. You don't really need it. What you need is the expertise, which increases condition duration, which, like I said, is the main thing here. If you can increase condition duration in any way possible, you made a good Weaver build. So I don't have access to Viper, so I settle for Dire, which increases survivability, which is very good in a PvP situation. It's the best alternative if you don't have Viper. So it increases toughness and vitality and gives you a higher bonus towards condition. And that is all of my armor. And also my weapons, and also my trinkets, rings, and earrings. For the earrings and the rings, I go with the exquisite Chrysocolla jewel. I think that's how you pronounce it. If it's not, oh well. Just to give that little bit of condition damage and power and vitality. This one is wrong. Should be that. There we go. Now this thing looks nicer. I knew there was something wrong with my condition damage. Alright, and there you go. So now I'm going to equip this sword. And might as well just keep the dagger, because the dagger has a really good churning earth ability for, like, that is pretty hefty, if I do say so myself. And this isn't too bad either. The important skill that you need to remember for the dagger is the number 5 ability for earth as well as for fire. If your opponent is inflicted by burn. So good combo. If you can't seem to get him to burn with these 3 abilities, what you can do is you hit Signet of Fire and then immediately hit him with Fire Grab. Now, the thing about Fire Grab, you need to be in close proximity. If you're too far away, it's not going to hit and it's not going to work. But if you're close by, this will deal a hell of a lot of damage. Alright, I think that is all. Oh, I guess I should tell you also I have Superior Rune of the Dalyak, and that is strictly for survivability purposes. You can easily switch this out with a rune that gives condition damage or bleeding or burning. That is completely fine. I do this, that's a personal preference. It is not something you have to do. Especially if you are able to use a Viper build. I am going to quickly go to a bank and show you what I mean. So if you have a Viper armor set, one thing you could try is Superior Rune of Balthazar. That gives you burning duration and some condition damage. Really helpful. If your main ability is bleeding, try Superior Runes of the Crate to increase bleeding duration. If you just want an overall kind of experience, you don't want either bleeding or burning, you could try Runes of the Lich to give you condition duration and vitality, which, like I said earlier, condition duration is very important. Now, this only gives you 15% condition duration. It's not a lot, but it can make a difference. I would suggest deciding between Runes of Balthazar or Runes of the Crate. Those are going to be very helpful if you have the Viper setup. Okay, if you're with me this far, now I'm actually going to start killing stuff and hopefully kind of show you what this build can do. Oh, and actually, before I do that, I should probably go over these skills. For healing, I always go with the glyph because it is the most amount of healing in a split second. And that is very important, especially if you're at 21,000, you jump all the way back down to like 3,000 or 2,000 or like 500. You need something, like, if you're in a pinch, you're gonna need some healing. and that's very important. So I always stick with the glyph. It's the highest amount of healing in a split second. I have chosen to go with 2 signets. Signet of Earth because, of course, bleeding damage. Signet of Fire because, of course, fire damage. Now, you can easily switch this out with Cleansing Fire, if you want. Not for the sake of curing conditions, but for the sake of fire damage, because yes, it is better than... or is it? It might be, of course, in case of the way that you have set up your build. Like, the slightest thing, of course, changes everything, doesn't it? This is a terrible example. About 10 minutes ago, this was way higher than the Signet of Earth, but like I said, you can switch them out at your convenience if you like, if that's something that you want to do, just for the sake, if this applies more damage, if you find that. Signet of Fire, and like you see, of course, this was at 11,000 before, you remember that. I don't know what changed. Probably attunement, I don't know. But anyway, so you got the Signet of Fire. You also have Primordial Stance, and the reason this is actually a good stance is because when you're attuned, if you look at each attunement, what it offers you, this is actually a very good skill to use. Now, remember when I was saying, you know, you could switch from earth to water to fire to use those vulnerability stacks. You can do the same thing with Primordial Stance. What you would do is, in this case, you hit F3 and F4. I did that in the wrong order. You want F3 to be at the forefront. In this case, you would hit Primordial Stance. You would activate it once.
Your seams are showing.
To apply the condition. Then, as soon as that's hit, you switch to Fire, and you hit it one more time. And the reason for that is because you would have, at this point, 2 stacks of vulnerability, and you would have a stack of fire and a stack of bleeding. This is, you're able to get the most out of applying conditions by doing this. And this is the elite skill, which is Weave Self, I think it's called. Yes. I'm actually just gonna go to the, just like in the middle of the somewhere, and kind of show this off. I can't go to the PvP lobby because for some reason I tried, it didn't work out. Because it's just a completely different build and it's not letting me do the skills that I want to do. So if you wouldn't mind bearing with me. I just remembered, before I start killing anything, I do need to talk about the weapon sigils. So for the sword, I have a Sigil of Corruption, which every time you kill an enemy, it gains a stack of 10 condition damage. This stack goes to a maximum of 25, which means this sigil will give you a boost of 250 condition damage, which is very helpful. The dagger, I have 2 daggers actually. So this one has Sigil of Smoldering, which increases burning duration, and this one is Agony, which increases bleeding duration. So that obviously explains why this damage got reduced. It's because I switched it out. And why this damage got increased, it's because I switched out the daggers. So by switching it back, this goes back to 11,000, and Cleansing Fire 5,977 does more than the Signet of Earth. So you just kind of have to play around and be attentive of what sigils you're using. You definitely don't have to use the burning and the bleeding for your daggers or your offhand, whichever item you choose to have, but you absolutely should go with the Sigil of Corruption in your main hand. Whatever your main hand is going to be, if it's going to be the sword, if it's going to be a staff, you definitely should have Sigil of Corruption somewhere on you as you're playing, because it is definitely going to help you. You're definitely going to need it. And that is all I have to say about the Sigil. Now I am going to kill stuff. Now, I don't know how successful I'm going to be showing you all these combos that I was trying to explain earlier, because the Weaver takes a lot of practice, especially because of all the attunements. Every time you see an attunement refresh, you want to be changing your attunement, because you want to keep this as active as much as you can. So it is not an easy thing to do, and I'm going to try my best, and we're going to see how successful I am. Now, whenever you're switching attunements, the first thing you want to be doing is your dual attack ability. That's your number 3 ability. That is the first thing you want to be doing at all times. So now, I'm in air. What I'm going to do now is Primordial Stance. Oh, that's not helpful. So I'm gonna hit Primordial Stance, switch, I'm gonna wait, and then he's dead, and I didn't get a chance to do it a second time. But essentially what I tried to do there, and I'm just gonna go over to you how it would look theoretically.
The wind of truth cannot be quelled.
You want your oh my gosh, okay, maybe I'll get another chance then. Oh, no, he's charging at me. That's not good. Oh, goodness. This guy, he means business, I think. Primordial Stance number 1. And then switch. And I'm not going to get a chance to do it again, because I'm going to run out of time. Now, I'm going to burn him and hit him with a number 5. And that does as much damage as it possibly could. Because I am not a precision build, I'm not a ferocity build, so it's not going to do like 5 to 7k damage, but it's going to do a little bit. Oh, goodness. Now in this case, I'm going to hit both signets because I want to apply as much condition as I can. And 1 head left. And if you notice how much he's bleeding for, I want you guys to rewind that. And please look at how much he was bleeding every second. That's a lot of damage. And remember, always try as much as possible switching your attunements. It is very important. And whenever you switch attunement to a different element, first thing you hit is your number 3 ability. That is the first thing if you don't get knocked back. Oh, goodness. And now we hit with bleeding. Some more bleeding. And some more bleeding. And then Primordial Stance. And then switch. We go Primordial Stance again. And you see the stacks of vulnerability. Plus fire, plus bleeding. That is what you want. I can't believe I was able to do that so successfully. that is your crowd control ability, a little bit of knockback. We're going to burn him with the Ring of Fire. And then we're going to hit him and miss. I think we missed. And we're going to go like this. Knock him down. Give us enough time to do our Churning Earth. Hit him with some bleeding. Then we're going to hit Signet of Earth to apply more bleeding. Then Signet of Fire. Then Primordial Stance. Then switch to Fire. Then Primordial Stance again. And he should be dead. That is essentially what I'm doing. I have killed 14 things. I've got a stack of 14, so let's see how much condition damage I have. I'm at 1500. That is not bad. I really hope this guide helped you guys a little bit, gave you an idea of, if you're not going to replicate this build, at least gave you an idea of what you want to achieve out of the Weaver, and given you an idea of how to build him yourself. Thank you for joining me, guys. I hope you enjoy this video, and please make sure to hit the little bell icon next to my name just below this video to keep up to date with all my new videos and new guides that I'm going to be coming out with in the short term. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me. See you next time.